I will have clients who get stuck in a sympathetic state, quite literally stuck in a sympathetic state. And I have been there. I have actually been stuck in a sympathetic state where my heart rate ran over 100 beats per minute for 24 hours per day, 5 days in a row. I have been there. And so I can identify this in my clients where I say, you cannot work out. And furthermore, I need you to go get a massage. And these are the things that then they come back after that whole week and they go, I lost weight. And I say, I know you did. Yeah. And you're burning less calories, eating the same, and you lost weight.
Welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast with Coach Strick. Join us as we expand the weight loss conversation to beyond just calories and dare to ask the question, why does eating less and exercising more sometimes not produce the desired results? Here's Coach Strick to discuss this Calorie Conundrum.
Hello and welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast. This is Coach Strick. And on today's episode, we have the hormone and fat loss specialist, Tanya Pennington-Miller. She is the founder of Nourish to Thrive, her remote nutritional therapy practice that helps women across the country lose stubborn weight by balancing their hormones through nutrition and lab testing. Tanya is a functional nutritional therapy practitioner that has competed in national figure competitions and Crossfit competitions in the past and stays active by running Spartan Races and riding mountain and dirt bikes. Being a woman over 40, she has had first-hand experience with low energy, weight gain, and hormonal issues. She now shares her knowledge and expertise with others in an attempt to affect as many lives as possible. Let's hear what Tanya has to say about lab testing, your mind, and your right to feel tired. Tanya, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I saw you speak at KetoCon. And basically, you have the same market as I do as a coach. You work with weight loss, and you specifically work with women over 40. How did you come to work with this group of women over 40? How did you come to work with those kind of clients?
Well, I think this happens for a lot of people in this field. A lot of it started because I'm a woman over 40 and really it's women over 35. And I've even considered kind of saying who I help, because what happens a lot of times is women who are 35 say, hey, oh my gosh, I can't wait till I'm 40 and I can work with you. Or, hey, can you take me on even though I'm not 40? And the reality is the things that I started experiencing really did start happening around the age of 35. And so my background is I've been a professional in the fitness industry for over 20 years. Right out of high school, I became a personal trainer, got NASM certified, ISSA certified, started my kinesiology degree, got my kinesiology degree, became a personal training manager, started running multiple gyms, always thought I would actually own a gym. Started competing in figure competitions, did that nationally for quite a few years. Ran half marathons. I run Spartan races anywhere from, 3 miles to 30 miles. I put athletes on stage. I no longer compete in figure competitions. I say because I love myself now. And that's not a dig on anybody who competes. I mean, it's a great sport to experience. And so I was no stranger to taking body fat off a person. I mean, putting a 6-pack on a person. I mean, I knew how to do all of that. And all of a sudden, this was shortly after I got married, I started experiencing things that I had never experienced before. And it's not that I put on a bunch of weight, but it's like I was slowly putting on just a little bit of weight, couldn't take it off. I was losing my motivation. And the problem with my personality style, which ends up being most of the women I work with too, because, they say you attract people who are like you in life, right? Well, this is true in my business too. Women who I work with feel lazy. I thought I was lazy. I thought I had become lazy. My self-talk had gotten so negative because I wasn't desiring to wake up and go for a run in the morning. Did I still do it? I did. I didn't want to. And I remember I was starting to get a lower belly pooch. That was awful. That was something I had never experienced before. My hair was falling out. I couldn't sleep at night. And one of the toughest things for me, because I was fairly newly married, is I was losing my sex drive. I mean, it was all but gone. And it was hard because I was, I'm attracted to my husband. I mean, he's an amazing man. And it's like I could have just been roommates and been happy. And so I couldn't find any answers. And I remember one day, the thing that made me say, okay, you've got to do something, is at this point in time, I owned 2 supplement and nutrition stores, okay, brick and mortar, and I was in one of them. And one of my most favorite things to do is give nutrition seminars. And I walked in that day tired, okay, but I had been tired. It's like I'd walk into either store and my employees would say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm just exhausted. And it just got to be what I always said. And I remember on this particular day thinking, I hope not enough people show up today and I can just reschedule this. I can just say, hey guys, sorry, we'll market it better next time, so that I could go home. But of course, quite a few people were showing up. So I grabbed a Bang drink, totally out of character for me, grabbed a Bang energy drink out of my fridge there to just caffeine myself up. And so then I just wasn't sleeping at night either at all. And so it was in that moment where I said, what is going on? You are no longer wanting to do the things that you love to do, the things that you've dedicated your life to. And that's really where the story began, that I went to my doctor and I said, I need some lab work. Can you just run everything, right? Whatever that means. And she did. And when my results came in, she tossed the results at me and she said, you're going to live to be 100. I wish I had your labs. And I think she said maybe my vitamin D was low, and that was about it. And those are the shoes that so many of my clients are in, because you can't get answers in the conventional system. And I will say this, there's a need for the conventional system for sure. I always say, go there to rule out. Go there to rule out the bad stuff, right? Cool. Now that we know we're not working with anything, crazy serious, let's work on optimizing. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what I needed to do. And when I found the right help, and I did find she's a medical doctor who was also an acupuncturist and had switched over to functional medicine, truly had switched over to functional medicine. I found that I was not just in adrenal fatigue, I was in adrenal exhaustion. I was hypothyroid. I had parasites. I mean, there were just so many things that ended up being wrong with me that I was able to work on and optimize, and then come out on the other side going, oh my gosh, I hadn't realized how bad I actually have been feeling, because we push through. And I asked this question to clients today, how are your energy levels? Oh, well, I'm tired when I wake up, but once I get going, I'm pretty good and I push through. So yeah, I'm pretty good. Those are not good energy levels just because you're stubborn enough to push through, right? So there's my long answer to how I got started with what I'm doing, and that is primarily who I help now are women who I'm not here to put a 6-pack on you. If a 6-pack comes because of the healing work that we're doing, great. But that's not our main focus. I am here to help you lose the stubborn weight, but I want you to have your energy back and enjoy life again and have that same passion that you once had for life.
Yeah, so you covered lots of important topics. One thing I would like to hit on before we get back to the lab testing, because I want to talk about that, but you mentioned something about how you felt lazy. And I think this is a common feeling of people who are doing things, but not getting the results that they think they should get. And they just write it off as them being lazy or them not having willpower. And I think it's an important thing to highlight, because a lot of people, especially people that are overweight, have a lot of discipline when it comes to dieting and exercise, but for whatever reason, what they're doing isn't working. And so they start blaming themselves, like blaming themselves that they're lazy, that they have no willpower or whatever. Could you speak a little bit more about that kind of topic?
Yeah, willpower. I hear that all of the time. And it's one of these things where we have to step back, and instead of fighting that low energy or fighting what we're perceiving as laziness, we have to first acknowledge it and then say, okay, why is this happening? Why could this possibly be happening? Because it's there. Now, on the topic of willpower, there can be so many things. So one of the tests that I run is it's a GI map stool test. And one of the things that we find a fair amount of time is an overgrowth of yeast or candida, right? Now, if a person has an overgrowth of yeast or candida, they are craving sugar like it's nobody's business, and it has nothing to do with willpower. You literally have these little yeasties and beasties in your gut that are just dying to stay alive. And the only way they can stay alive is if you eat sugar. And so literally from deep down inside, you're craving sugar. And it's not because you don't have willpower. This is literally from a physiological level that you're craving sugar. Or a person who has insulin resistance for one reason or another, those elevated insulin levels running through your system all the time, you're going to crave sugar. And you can white knuckle it for a period of time, but ultimately you're likely not going to win that battle unless we take care of the insulin resistance. So it's really digging deep to find why. It can be as simple as women will say, it's only the week prior to my cycle. It's only the week before I start. I'll do weird things. And women will say, I'm embarrassed to even tell you the things that I pull out of my cupboard and I put together. And it's just this sweet on top of sweet on top of sweet. And I eat it. And I don't even want anybody to see me doing it, but this only happens the week prior. And sometimes, not every time, but sometimes all we have to do is double the amount of magnesium that they're taking that week prior to their cycle. And that helps to take care of those cravings. So it's really figuring out at the root, why are these happening? Because one of the most freeing things in the world is to not have what I call a magnetic pull towards sugar. So you're at work and somebody brought donuts because it's Tuesday, right? That people just do. Now, I've never worked in like a corporate setting. I've never been at a place where people are just like bringing in food, but this is what I've heard from clients over the past 20 plus years. And now you're like, wow, I never thought I was going to have a donut today, but here I go. And I can't stop myself, right? It is very freeing when you do start working at the root of really what is going on, and you walk by that room and you go, I mean, I'm not going to say I hate donuts, but I don't need to have one. It is very liberating and very freeing for a person to get to that place. And that's where I want a person to get. I don't want a person to say, I wanted it so bad, but I didn't do it. Are you proud of me? Well, I mean, a part of me, yes. But I would be much happier if you actually kind of just were okay without it. And that's my goal in working with clients today.
Yeah. And you mentioned multiple times in that getting to the root, and you mentioned using these lab tests, and that's similar to what I do, is use functional lab tests or functional interpretations of conventional tests to kind of get more clues about what's going on at the root. So could you talk a little bit about some of the tests you use and what you're kind of looking for?
Yeah. So where I normally start out is just with doing blood work. Okay. So I will run maybe roughly around 35 markers. And I will include hormones. Now, blood is not necessarily the best for testing hormones. However, I find that more often than not, it's enough for us to accomplish what we need to accomplish. But we can't just run sex hormones. I'll sometimes have somebody say, hey, I already have my own labs. Can I just bring them to you? Well, what do you have? Well, I had my hormones run. Okay, the hormones are kind of the side effect. Like if they're out of range, I want to know why. right? Even if you have a thyroid panel, okay, so it's out of range, you're showing to be hypo, but why? We need to come back and take a look. I need to look at your liver. I need to look at how well you are detoxifying. Are you getting rid of, I mean, there's women who their actual estradiol or estrogen levels will be very low on a lab panel, but their body isn't getting rid of used up estrogen. So now you have this recycled estrogen floating around their body. And so then they have these effects of estrogen dominance, which sounds crazy because they'll have low estrogen levels. But we have to get to the root by taking a look at the entire panel. So of course we take a look at iron and iron stores. We do the general, CBC with DIF, which actually gives us quite a bit of information there. We run a metabolic panel, but we do a lot more. I like to know, what are your homocysteine levels? Are you methylating your B vitamins? Is your liver struggling in that area? Of course, we run a full thyroid panel, right? Not what I actually had somebody send me a message the other day and say, hi, my friend told me about you. I'd love to come see you. My doctor ran my thyroid panel and I don't remember what number she gave me, but she said something like, he told me that my thyroid is a 2.2. That seems really low to me. What do you think? And it's like, oh my goodness, one marker.
Yeah.
And you see this all the time. One marker for thyroid. So anyway, so of
it's
course
not even a thyroid marker. That's
and
funny,
it's not even a thyroid. It's not even a thyroid hormone. Are you kidding me? And of course we test for antibodies because, oftentimes when somebody is hypothyroid, there's an autoimmune component to it. And so that's where I start. And if we end up not resolving everything we want to resolve, we can go on to, we can run a Dutch test, which is going to give us a lot more information about hormones. We also can go on to run a GI map stool test, which is what I talked about earlier. When I run that, we combine it with an MRT 170 food sensitivity, because we have to, at the same time, we've got to pull out the foods we're sensitive to while going in and healing the gut at the same time. And the GI map tells us so much about what is going on in our gut, what type of pathogens that we have, not just living in there, but which ones are proliferating, which ones are causing trouble. But the key is, I think food sensitivity tests, I don't know if they're still like running through people's Instagram feeds like they were at one point, all those like buy your own food sensitivity tests, and people would buy them and they're all excited. And then they stop eating the foods that they're sensitive to. And they're like, I feel so much better. And then 2 months later, they feel just the same as they did before they ever pulled those foods out. Right. And the problem there is because your food sensitivities that you have are caused by whatever disruption is going on in your gut. So if all you do is pull out the foods that you're sensitive to, now you're just creating new food sensitivities because you didn't heal what was going on in your gut. So we do have to remove what you're sensitive to because those are seen as stressors on your body. And we've got to remove as many stressors as possible. And then we go in with a gut healing protocol, with supplements, but just for a period of time, right? This is generally 12 weeks. There are a couple of protocols that can go up to 24 weeks, depending on, what the findings are. And the goal is to be able to eat those foods that you were sensitive to. I don't want somebody to never eat avocado again for the rest of their life because it showed up as a yellow or a red. And that's often what we can accomplish is once the gut is healed, now you can test those foods and see how they're treating you if you can add them back in. Now, when something like MSG shows up as a red, right, that's not something I ever say, yeah, try to work that back in. But, if avocado is something you enjoy or eggs or something else that showed up, yeah, try to work those back in. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned, hormone test, gut test, blood work. Before we got on the call, you mentioned something about DNA test. How do you use this DNA test to help you help clients?
Yeah. So DNA, and this is the most recent thing that I have gotten involved in. And this is because I have felt for years now that it was the missing component to everything that I offer. And so I started off by running my own DNA and got so many answers from this. So one thing I've always known about myself is that I've always had a harder time than the person next to me, right? And I mean, this goes back to elementary school. I mean, it's insane to think that I was in the 4th grade thinking, gosh, her legs are so skinny. I wish I had her legs. Right. But that's the reality. And this is what happens. And going through high school, I just always knew there was a girl. I mean, she's just was gorgeous and she was thin and she ate. We had Pizza Hut on campus, a little, I don't know why they do that. Anyway, she ate a mini pizza every single sponsorship. Exactly. Exactly. And she ate a mini pizza thick crust mini pizza every single day at lunch. I mean, there's just no way I ever could have done that. So I've just known growing up, I mean, both sides of my family, obesity, type 2 diabetes. I mean, it's all there. And so I run my DNA and I find, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but it's great to have this information that I am like a professional fat maker. So basically I would be the last living in an apocalypse because my body not only makes fat, I mean, it's just like, I am so good at it. I make it. It's also has a tendency to be inflammatory fat. That's great. And furthermore, my body is not very efficient at breaking down fat and using it for energy. Okay. And furthermore, exercise is not something that is going to be super beneficial for me when it comes to maintaining a healthy body composition. Okay. So from this information, what I get is, okay, so what is most important for me is that I actually don't go over on calories too much, because if I do go over on my calories, my body is a professional at just going, oh, perfect, we'll store that. Perfect, we'll store that. And I also have a tendency in my DNA. Now, your DNA is not your destiny, but it's important to know this information, that one of my top 3 priorities is insulin and glucose. So the type of calories that I eat are going to be even more important, because if I am overdoing it on carbohydrates and sugars, then furthermore, those are going to be stored as fat, as triglycerides. And so with this information, I now can work with clients and say, hey, look right here, it shows that exercise is actually going to be the best thing for you. So we really need to get your movement going. We really need to, there's different things that you can take a look at to help guide somebody's health journey. And that's what it is a journey, because you never go through a program and then go, perfect. I am so glad I went through that program 10 years ago because I optimized myself and I've just been good to go ever since. I mean, it's just not the reality. And so we're on this journey. And so what we do is I actually have a program that I'm going to be launching, and it's going to launch every January, May, and September. And it's designed that come join me in this first launch, and we're going to work through some stuff together for 10 weeks. We're going to incorporate your DNA. We're going to incorporate the other lab testing. But guess what? That's not where it ends after the 10 weeks. You can hop back in at any time, maybe one time per year. You want to work with me on optimizing your health. You want to learn a little bit more about your DNA. That's what the program will be designed to do. And I really feel it's actually, the program is called DNA Reset for Fat Loss, specifically for women, so that we can just keep digging deep. Your DNA can tell you about your ability to detox estrogen. Do we need you? Do you have trouble with your phase 2 detoxification? I personally benefit from taking sulforaphane. There's a lot of things that we can prevent. One of my other top 3s is bone health. And I thought, well, that's strange. I've never even broken a bone in my life. Well, it's still valuable information, because a lot of these things, they happen later, right? They happen later in life. So I can say, good, let me keep doing what I'm doing. Let me keep doing my resistance training, right? Because my working out isn't just for one thing. It's also for other aspects of my health. And so, of course, I continue to work out, even though it's not the thing that's going to, get me to where I want to be. So it's a lot of information, right? Like, you just grab this information from so many different places to find what is your recipe, what is going to be the best thing for you, because it's not necessarily the best thing for the person sitting next to you, or even for your sister who shares genes with you. So it's been incredibly invaluable.
Yeah, it's just, there's the old saying, assess, don't guess. And it's another component of this assessing, is kind of knowing what your DNA is saying you have potential to be or not be, and then utilizing that information to your advantage. Most of the time we're just going through our health journey blind, and the only evidence we have of if we're doing something right or wrong is how we feel and how we look, and we don't have any of these other details that could really help us move our health in the right direction.
Absolutely.
It's
And
really,
I think it's what you just said, but don't you think that it's the scale? That isn't that the thing that people gauge all of it by? What the scale is doing. Right?
Yeah, that's yeah, I was messed up on that one, because that is an average person, that's what they're looking at, is I'm just the scale, and there's so many other variables to your health, and the scale is just a side effect, just a side benefit or side effect of kind of what you've been doing.
I remember I'm going to probably go off, but this story came to mind, and I remember I just actually sold my supplement store a few months ago, but this is when I still had it, and there was a lady that I had been working with on nutrition, and I remember her goal weight was 129. Something about dipping into the 20s, right? So, and she had lost weight, and she was so happy. Her husband was complimenting her. She loved how she looked in the gym. I mean, everything was, in the mirror, everything was beautiful. But her weight was 131, and she just never could reach that 129, and she was down about it. And I thought, wow, how we let that number control us. And really, it could have to do with, not drinking as much water one day, and you'd probably, drop down to that 129. Now, what does that really mean? Nothing. But that's the reality. She's not alone in her story, right?
Yeah, that's a very common thing. Yeah. And so that's this whole idea of the scale, and this calories in, calories out mentality is kind of why I was, inspired to create this podcast. Could you talk to us about that whole, thought process, that whole theory of, well, if you want to lose weight, you just have to exercise more and eat less, and then the scale will go down.
Yeah. I tell you what, if that were the truth, I would have no clients. It's like I told you, the clients who come to me, I don't work with lazy women, not because I say I won't work with you if you're lazy. It's that, I have women who are coming to me who are like me. They're not afraid to work. They're not afraid to eat a little bit less. They're not afraid to move a little bit more. So if that were the answer, I literally wouldn't have any clients. We'd all just take care of it on our own, right? Sure. I never would have had to have gone to the functional medicine doctor that I went to way back then, because I would have been doing all the right things. I kept doing the running, even though I didn't want to. But you truly can end up putting yourself, especially if you have DNA similar to mine, somebody who will survive in a zombie apocalypse. Just because you start eating less doesn't mean that you're going to be good to go. No, that just tells your body, oh, perfect, store it up more. She's not eating enough. We don't know if she's going to eat enough, so we need to store that. Oh, and she's exercising a little bit too much, store even more. And and you can watch this happen. So there's that element of, and that's a stressor. That is a major stressor on your body, and it will affect your adrenals, which then will affect your thyroid, right? And it's just this cascade that starts happening. And it's what happened to me. It probably started with my adrenals and then got to my thyroid. But that's exactly how it happens. And then there's this element of, what are we eating? I would say, if I had to put a percentage on it, I would say about maybe 65% of the women that I work with have some element of either insulin resistance or hyperinsulinemia. And if you have either one of those, we've got to pull back on your carbohydrates. And I'm not a hater of carbohydrates, but therapeutically, there are times where we do need to pull back on those, so that we can get those insulin levels down. Because when your insulin levels are elevated, you are quite frankly making and storing fat by doing nothing. You can be reducing on what you're eating, but you already have that insulin resistance there. And so your body literally can't tap into your stored fat if your insulin levels are elevated. We love the hormone glucagon because glucagon is what taps into those fat cells and says, hey, come out to play. Let's go. The person needs you for energy. So now we're using stored body fat for energy. But the thing I always like to say is you have the hormone insulin and you have the hormone glucagon. They like to play on the same playground. Okay. The playground are your blood vessels. The problem is they can't play in there at the same time. It's one or it's the other. And insulin will always trump glucagon. So if insulin's in your bloodstream, glucagon's over here like, man, I wish I could, get into those fat cells to give her energy, but I can't because insulin's out there. And so the only way we're going to bring that down is by pulling back on those carbohydrates. So this completely negates calories in, calories out. It's the type of calories that we're eating that we have to be careful of. And when I have clients eat this way, when I have clients track their food, I do have in my app, they track what they're eating. So I can keep an eye on, I actually don't have them track initially unless we're struggling and they're having trouble losing weight that they want to lose. Then I say, put the foods in there that you're eating. I don't care so much about 3/4 of a cup or 5 ounces, I'm not really concerned about that. It's the type and the quality of foods that you're eating that I'm going to be commenting back to you about. And you can do this when you've really kind of reduced that carbohydrate intake enough, because the proteins and the fats that they're eating are so satiating that not only do they not end up overeating, a lot of times they end up not eating enough calories. And that's something I actually have to get on them about to make sure we're not lowering the metabolism too much, because your metabolism will meet you where you are. So if you can increase on the calories that you're eating a little bit, well, your metabolism will kind of follow you there and you'll start to burn more. And if you decrease on the calories that you're eating, your metabolism is a whole heck of a lot smarter than you, and it's going to lower and you're just going to burn less. And so it really has to do with type and quality than it does over quantity. And I'm not going to say that it doesn't matter at all, right? Calories in, calories out. Of course, there's an element of that matters, but it is not as simple as what doctors recommend to my clients, which is move more, eat less. It just isn't.
Yeah. So what would you say if I was a established fitness professional or tenured physician and I say, yeah, but it's calories in, calories out. and you say it's the quality and what you're eating, and yeah. I say, well, it's just calories in, calories out. What would your response be to that?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is, how is that working for your patients?
Okay.
Number one, right? And number two, I would say, let's break into some studies together, because the studies are out there. It's just that doctors get lazy. They just do. They go through medical school and they learn what they learn. And a lot of times that's it. They're not going to keep up on the studies that say, cholesterol in eggs isn't actually going to affect your serum cholesterol levels. They're not reading those studies. So that's what I would say is, number one, how is it working for your patients? Number two, let's dive into some studies together and take a look, because the research is out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing you mentioned earlier about the exercising more and eating less, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, is that that's a stressor on the body. And this is hard for people to wrap their mind around. Yeah. The fact that stress is a major player in the hormones in your body and how your body loses weight or gains weight, or, the health of your body. And exercising more and eating less is a huge stressor. And I would like to add to that, if you're stressing about being 129 and you're 131, that's another stressor. Yes. So not only are you stressing your body by not eating enough, stressing your body by exercising more than you're fueling yourself to do, and then you're stressing about the weight on the scale along with every other stressor in your life, that's going to affect your health and your weight. I just like to point that out.
100%. 100%. That is absolutely it. There's a lot of times where I actually have to say, you are not allowed to work out for 1 week. You aren't allowed to, or you have permission to not work out for 1 week, because I have to try to take that stressful element away of like, oh my gosh, but what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Because I will have clients who get stuck in a sympathetic state, quite literally stuck in a sympathetic state. And I have been there. I have actually been stuck in a sympathetic state where my heart rate ran over 100 beats per minute for 24 hours per day, 5 days in a row. I have been there. And so I can identify this in my clients where I say, you cannot work out. And furthermore, I need you to go get a massage. And these are the things that then they come back after that whole week and they go, I lost weight. And I say, I know you did.
Yeah.
And you're burning less calories, eating the same, and you lost weight this week. And it can be substantial sometimes. It can be a substantial, for a week's worth of weight loss.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Like you said, like it's, my mentor says, your body's not worried about, doing you can't do a cartwheel while a lion's chasing you. And
Right.
So basically like your body's not worried about losing weight when you're in such a stressed state. And so if you remove some of these stressors, whether it's mental, physical, physiological, whatever the stressor, if you start removing some of the stressors, then your body has the capacity to heal and to do what it needs to do to bring you to a healthy weight. And so,
Yes.
yeah, so stress is, it all comes down to stress one way or another. It just depends how you define what stress is, but that's ultimately what is affecting our weight and our health. And yeah, you can't just go 100 all the time. You have to back it off every once in a while too.
Right. And to take that even further, here's the thing. There are some stressors that we can remove. And then there are some stressors that we cannot remove, right? Being a mom, having a career, financials. I mean, you name it, right? Those things are going to be there. So we can't remove all stressors. So what we have to do is, on the opposite side of that, what are you doing that all of that has you in your sympathetic state? What are your fight or flight, right? What are you doing to tap into that parasympathetic state? What are you doing to tap into that rest and digest? And so you sort of have to find that balance of, okay, the stress is going to be here. We've got rid of what we could, but these stressors are going to be here. So now what can we do? And that can be as simple as I actually will have clients set their alarm on their phones for every 2 hours to do a breathing technique. That's it. Every 2 hours to do a breathing technique to allow them to tap into that parasympathetic state. Do a breathing technique before you eat every time, because we are mindlessly eating. We're eating while we're in work meetings. We're eating in front of our laptop. We're eating while we're driving, while we're standing, all of those things. And those are all stressors. So it's really a matter of, we do have to live with some stress. And so what are we doing to balance that out? And that's where that whole element of self-care comes in. I kind of want a different word. I feel like self-care is so overused now, right? It's just like that, it's thrown around everywhere. But self-care truly is a prescription. It is not an option. It is a prescription if we truly and wholly want to find optimized health.
Yeah, it's a lot different now than maybe a couple 100 years ago. A lot of the things that we're talking about as far as self-care and paying attention closer to what you're eating and things like this are becoming more and more less an option and more a requirement to maintain your health. It's not even like to have the best health ever. It's just like, just to maintain an adequate level of health, you have to do a lot of these steps that 200, 300 years ago we didn't have to even think about, really.
You're right.
Just because we got so many toxins and so many stresses that we didn't used to have, and now we have to, kind of modify our lives around all those stressors, like you were saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing you said was, we have this level of stress that we know about, and that's one thing that one way I think about nutrition is like, and items that we use in our daily life that are toxic. Like, we know these things are toxic, so why would you want to consume them even in a small amount? Because there's so many small amounts that all adds up, And so when it comes to nutrition, you mentioned a big issue people have is consuming too much carbs, too many carbohydrates. What are some other common issues people are making with their nutrition? I know you offer nutrition plans for people. So what are some common mistakes people make when it comes to nutrition, besides just, consuming way too many carbs?
Actually, truly, what I see most often is not eating enough, but namely not eating enough protein. Not eating enough protein. And I see this all of the time. And women are who I'm looking at mostly, right? So speaking mostly about women, it's not eating enough protein. And it's detrimental. I mean, it is detrimental. And then it's like, I just don't know why I'm losing my hair. Really? You don't know why you're losing your hair? You're not even giving your body the building blocks that it needs to make hair. My nails are splitting. I don't know why. And so under eating on protein, I think, is truly a travesty. And so then, of course, then I think that's really also where then the higher carb comes in, because, even if you're under eating on calories, I see this overdoing it on carbohydrates. And I think it's this misconception of truly what a carbohydrate is. I used to teach these sugar detoxes, which I'm actually going to be doing one within my program as well. We're gonna do one together for 21 days. But it's interesting because I'll say, hey, I'm going to be doing this sugar detox, and somebody will go, oh, yeah, I don't really eat much sugar. And so then they come into the detox and they go, oh, okay, I hadn't realized. And then they get pissed. I will say this, they get mad because I teach them how to read nutrition labels, and they say, why is sugar in everything? It doesn't even need to be in this, and they put sugar in this. I don't understand. So it truly is just a lack of knowing, a lack of knowledge, and a lot of trust, unfortunately, that, there's somebody out there who has our health in mind. And it just isn't the case. So it's just low calorie, low protein, high carbohydrate, and it's a mess.
Yeah, that's like I said before, is like, we have to do things that we didn't have to do in the past. In the past, we were growing our own food in the yard, in the backyard, and now we've handed off all that responsibility, all that growing of food and producing of food, to somebody else. Yes. And their job in their mind is to make money. It's a business. And so their whole point is not to give you the most nutritious food that you could possibly have. It's, for one, make it as cheap as possible for them so they can make as much money. But also on kind of the shady side is they want to make it taste so good that you want to keep eating their food. And one of the ways they do is they just add sugar to everything. And I mean, like you said, sugar's in all these products that don't even need sugar, but it's in there. And then if you were to give this person that same thing without the sugar, like in a natural homemade form, it wouldn't taste right to them, because there's sugar is so high that they have to have that strong dose of sugar even to taste what they're used to tasting. And that's when we find ourselves in trouble.
Yeah, it's that whole element of that hyperpalatability,
Yeah.
and we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned into this, if you're eating those types of foods.
Yeah. So I know that, I saw you at KetoCon. So is that the type of recommendation that you're giving your clients, or is it something less, kind of less extreme? And how have you noticed, if you do use that, how have you noticed it with women versus like how men are affected by the keto diet?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I do use ketogenic protocols therapeutically within my practice. It's not for everyone. And I actually don't recommend a particular way of eating until I get their labs back. Because if I get labs back and, A1C is beautiful, insulin levels are under a 6, LDH is good, then I know this person is controlling their blood sugars very well. And now if they prefer a ketogenic way of living, that's fine too. They can do that. But if not, where I really like to start is with more of a paleo approach, where we are pulling the grains, including legumes, and we are pulling the dairy. Not that people can't have any of those, but it gives us kind of this clean slate to begin with. Because a lot of times what happens, and this happens a lot of times with dairy and with grains, is people won't know that they have a sensitivity to them. People won't know that they're actually causing some inflammation in their body. And part of this is because, and I find this in my sugar detox, one of the sort of, I kind of give it as an option. And I say, if this is your first time going through a sugar detox, I prefer you remove the dairy, but if you're carrying your dairy like a little baby like this, and you feel like I'm taking your baby away, then on this first round, leave it in. Because people get very like, they want to like hold their cheese or whatever. They just love dairy.
It's weird.
Right? It is. There's a weird thing there. And so sometimes I'll just say, okay, for the first time, or I'll say, keep it in for the first week. If you decide to remove it the second week, great. Right? So here's what happens, because a person will say, I know dairy doesn't affect me. I'm fine. It doesn't send me to the bathroom. I don't, any of that. But what can happen is our bodies we're made to survive. And so if you're eating something on a regular basis that you're sensitive to, your body can actually protect you from that. Your body can actually start to produce antihistamines so that you don't get that congestion. Your body will actually produce endorphins so that you actually have a good sense of well-being when you eat that particular food. So what you have to do is remove that food. And I find that 21 days is a really good amount of time to do this. You remove that food for 21 days. Maybe you noticed a change, maybe you didn't. Then you add that food back in, and we actually will all do this together as a class. Is I'll say, okay, on this last one, bring whatever it is, your piece of cheese, whatever you cut out, and then let's test it. And then when you now your body's defenses are down, because your body's like, oh, good, she's not eating that cheese anymore. Don't have to produce all those fancy things. Well, now you eat it, your body's caught off guard. And then before you know it, you can't even breathe because you have congestion, or your wedding ring won't come off and on, or your joints are hurting, right? These symptoms can be different for every person. And so that's truly the way to find out, is to remove the thing and then add it back in. So I like to start with paleo for that reason. And then we go from there. For some people, paleo ends up being the answer. For other people, they've really missed a particular food item, and we'll say, because I want a person to be able to maintain the way that they're eating. And so we'll work together to add particular food items back in. And if it's working for them, they're still feeling great, they have great energy, then add that particular food item back in.
Yeah, it's funny with some of these foods that we kind of get addicted to. I mean, milk has caseomorphins, and gluten has the similar type molecules. But I used to give corporate, I used to do a corporate lunch and learn type of deals with my corporate boot camp. And I'll never forget when I was giving a talk and describing paleo and how you're taking out milk, dairy products. You would have thought I was asking them to like rob a bank or something. Like,
yes,
like, they were just like, what? No milk? Like, how are you supposed to get calcium? Like, they're so mind blown by like this idea of not having milk, and people are just so addicted to it that it's nuts. Like it's like they can't they can't even see themselves without it. And same with cheese.
Yeah.
But I have a story about the effect that you were talking about. I had one client, and I used to do this like 21-day challenge. This is what it was actually. And it was like basically no grains, legumes, no dairy, no artificial anything, no added sugar. It was like basically trying to take everything out. And I had this, some of these clients, and I had this one client that used to come to my free boot camp I did on Saturday. And she was doing this challenge, and she's feeling good and whatnot. And it was like the last day or something, like day 20, day 21. It was the end of this challenge, and she went to this birthday party, and she had some pizza. Maybe, I think she said one piece, maybe 2 pieces of pizza. And she said the next day, she couldn't put her hair in a ponytail. Her husband had to put her hair in a ponytail because she was suffering from what she thought was carpal tunnel. But by the end of the 21 days, all of a sudden she doesn't have carpal tunnel. She eats pizza and she can't even put her hair in a ponytail because her wrists are hurting so much. So it just goes to show, like if you take that stuff out and then you try to add it back in, your body will let you know, like, this stuff is not good.
It's so true. It's funny. I had a woman who had gone through one of them, and coming out of it, there was quite a few things she found that she couldn't eat anymore. And her husband said, "I told you never should have taken that class. You've been a mess ever since you went through that." And he was so upset. It's like, oh, the opposite of what you should pull from that. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's it's a weird situation because I've thought about like the pros and cons, because it's a definite phenomenon that happens, like whether it's with wheat or dairy or whatever it is. But people do a 21-day challenge and they'll have no problems, quote unquote, with X, Y, or Z food, and then after, like, they can't eat it, and then it kind of ruins it for them. But at the same time, it does help bring awareness around like these certain type of foods that are potentially harming us without us really knowing it.
Yeah, it's very true.
All right, so any last words for someone that they might have been going through the conventional ways of going to lose weight or to gain health or whatever it is that they're going after, and they've gone to their doctor, they've got their labs look normal, they've gone to their personal trainer, maybe even nutritionist, and they're not seeing results. What advice would you give someone like that?
Well, the number one thing I want to say is it's not in your head. I can promise you that it's not in your head. I have way too many women tell me that they actually did start to think it was in their head because, everything's normal on your labs. Right. And so don't stop digging. Don't stop looking. Don't stop trying to find that person who can help you. And I'm not the person to help everybody, but what I do at times is, if there is somebody who comes to me, a requirement for working with me is you have to do lab testing. Not everybody wants to, it doesn't fit in everyone's budget. But I have a lot of colleagues who specialize in different things, don't all require lab testing. So, if you do go to a person, even ask them, do you know somebody else? Is there another professional in your field who maybe can, help with whatever it is that I'm struggling with? There is somebody that can help you, but you have to be your own advocate, and you can't stop looking for that person to help you. And also, I want to say, not only is it not all in your head, but you have permission to be tired. When I get labs back, I find myself saying this so often because I just looking at the labs, I go, I can't even believe this woman's walking around, low iron levels. I mean, just everything is like, how on earth? And so I'll say, before we get started today and going over your results, I want you to know that you have permission to be tired. And I can't tell you how many women that I have seen just in tears after saying that one thing, because we fight it for so long. We fight it. We think we're lazy. We think we've lost motivation. Our personalities have even changed a little bit. but you can get to the root of it, and the road's going to look different for every person. You might find that person who's going to help you first off. You might have to go through a few people, but you can find that person to help you.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I think I've probably said that at least 20 times on this podcast. And it's kind of one of the, driving factors behind the podcast is that there are answers. And there's probably somebody that's gone through exactly what you're going through that made it to the other side. And a lot of them have been on this podcast. And so, it's a lot of times it's you have to go against the grain a little bit sometimes, and go against what you might have thought you believed before, like the whole calories in, calories out, and that's the answer kind of thing. But there's multiple things that fit into that category. And then also, it's a lot of people think it's just in their head, and I've had so many clients tell me, they've gone to the specialist, and the specialist says, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with you," and they've left in tears because they know there's something wrong with them. But this professional they're going to for help is telling them there's nothing wrong with them, yet they're telling them that there is something wrong. And so it's kind of like one of these things, you start to think that they're crazy, and it's people like yourself that are looking to get to the root of the problem, that are helping people that are in this kind of situation. So your work is truly needed. We need more people out there to spread the word that there's a lot more going on than the scale says, for sure.
Thank you, and likewise to you as well.
So if the listeners would like to find out more about you or get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, they can find me on Instagram. I'm on there quite often, and my handle is Tanya.Pennington.Miller, my full name. And then my website is TanyaPennington-Miller.com. And they can find me there as well. And I do my best to respond to DMs if you want to send me a message there. But you can kind of get a feel on my Instagram page, the types of things that I'm teaching on and talking about. So I do a lot of nutrition tips, maybe a little bit different than you are used to getting from people.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on today, and I hope you have a good one.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Tanya. Like many others that end up in the functional health space, Tanya was forced to do her own research. Being a fit and toned athlete with a competitive nature worked when she was younger, but the intense activity and stress eventually caught up to her. And if this can happen to someone as motivated and knowledgeable about fitness as Tanya, then it can happen to anyone. This is an energy thing, and many in today's fast-paced society are overstressed and under-recovered. Oftentimes, the harder, faster, longer mentality is rewarded, and even though our bodies are taking a beating, we keep pushing. Eventually, we begin to feel lazy, or just don't have the energy to do the things we know we need to do. But like Tanya said, you have the right to be tired. If you feel less than 100% and know something isn't right, or if you have gone to a professional for help and they tell you there is nothing wrong with you, remember, it's not all in your head. Like I've said many times on this podcast, continue to search until you find an expert like Tanya that has been in your shoes and has made it to the other side. This one thing could save you a lot of time, energy, and frustration. And with that said, this is Coach Strick saying thanks for listening. And remember, when calories in, calories out doesn't work, that, my friend, is a calorie conundrum.
This podcast, including Coach Strick and guests, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects for the use of any information contained herein. Coach Strick and/or guests may recommend products or services in which they have a direct or indirect financial interest. To find out more, please visit www.calorieconundrum.com.